Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the IDF shuts down a radio station in the West Bank. The UN is warning that a war between Israel and Lebanon could soon begin, and a new historical discovery may reveal the city behind the biblical story of David and Goliath. I'm Natasha Kirchuk here with the latest news in Israel. The Israeli army has shut down yet another Palestinian radio station in the West Bank for inciting violence against Israel. IDF troops have closed down the Al-Sanabel radio station and arrested 5 of its employees. The station, located just outside of Hebron, has allegedly been supporting attacks on Israelis, praising terrorist activities, and calling for Palestinians to join the uprising against Israel. The head of the Army's Central Command gave orders to shutter the radio hub on Wednesday morning, and the IDF and Shin Bet gathered to seize the company's technical equipment and transmitters. The 5 employees arrested have now been handed over to the Shin Bet for further questioning. This isn't the first Palestinian radio station to be shut down by the IDF. In March, Israeli authorities shuttered the West Bank broadcaster Palestine Al-Yamen, or Palestine Today, after similar accusations of incitement. The Shin Bet later revealed that the station was being used by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad organization as a central instrument for inciting violence against Israel. Israeli political leaders have spoken out consistently about incitement in Palestinian media, and Palestinian TV programs have been accused of being the source of inspiration for many terrorist attacks against the Jewish state. In January, the 15-year-old Palestinian terrorist who stabbed the Israeli mother Daphne Meir to death said he was influenced by Palestinian television broadcasts, which portray Israel as a murderer of young Palestinians. We recently marked 10 years since the last war with Lebanon, but now the United Nations Security Council is warning that any violations of the ceasefire agreement could ignite a whole new conflict. The advisory came as part of a resolution the Council adopted unanimously yesterday, renewing the deployment of 15,000 UN peacekeeping troops to southern Lebanon for another year. The document stressed that none of the parties or the region can afford another war, and went on to condemn any attempts to threaten Lebanese stability. The 15-member world body also expressed concern that a permanent ceasefire hasn't yet replaced UNSC Resolution 1701, that ended the 34-day war between Israel and the Hezbollah terror group in the summer of 2006. Over the past decade, one of the bill's key demands that all Lebanese militias be disarmed has completely been ignored. Hezbollah in particular continues to increase in strength, with full logistical and financial help from Iran. Meanwhile, closer to home, former Mossad chief Tamir Pardo is warning that Israeli society may be headed for civil war, unless immediate steps are taken to reduce internal divisions. In his first public statement since stepping down in January, the ex-spy chief said that internal strife poses far greater threats within external factors, and that Israeli society must do more to unite. Pardo also weighed in on the peace process, agreeing with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's vision of an independent Palestinian state alongside Israel. An entirely new battle in the hills of northern Syria has broken out, but this time it's not part of the country's civil war. Until recently, Kurdish fighters have been combating ISIS, but now they're being targeted by Turkish forces who are trying to push them east of the Euphrates River. Joining us in the studio today is Dr. Mordechai Kedar to talk about how the situation in Syria will have an impact on Israel and the Middle East. Thanks so much for coming in.
Pleasure.
So to begin, what is going on in Syria? That's the big question right now.
Well, first of all, there is no Syria anymore. This once have been state is not a state anymore. This is only on the map. On the ground, there are many parties who are actually eating the corpse of the thing which once was Syria. There's the Russians and the Turks and the Iranians and Hezbollah, and Assad, and the rebels, and other rebels, and other rebels, and all kinds of organizations, hundreds of organizations only on Syria, in addition to the outsiders who invade, recently Turkey. Turkey today is concerned with one thing: how to prevent an establishing of another Kurdistan, this time on the Syrian ruins, after she has already one Kurdistan on the ruins of Iraq. Because Turkey is afraid that these two parts of Kurdistan, Iraq and Syria, will unite and become too big, too dangerous, and will ignite the situation inside Turkey with the Kurds as well. But in this thing, they are in the same boat with the Iranians, because in Iran also there are Kurds who are actually willing to get rid of the Iranian occupation, the Persian occupation as they say it, in order to unite with their brothers in Iraq, in Syria, and in Turkey. So definitely, what we see today, the invasion of the Turkish army into Syria, is in order to prevent exactly this.
Now, what about Russia and the United States? What is their involvement in Syria right now?
Well, today there is some kind of meeting of interests between the United States and Russia, because both states still want to resuscitate this dying regime of Assad, because they are afraid both that a disintegration of Syria will bring in a chaos which nobody will be able to control. So Assad, although nobody really loves him, especially the Americans, yet he is viewed as the least bad option compared to other options, especially the Islamic State, which can disseminate its Islamic jihadist ideology all over the world through the social media, as we see during the last few years. So today, there is an understanding between the United States and Russia that Turkey should do its job with the Kurds in order not to promote the disintegration of the state, in this case, to a Kurdish state. And another thing is that nobody really wants to aggravate Erdogan, because too many parties, especially NATO in the United States, rely on Incirlik, on the airbase of Incirlik, for various reasons. So, and they are afraid that if they aggravate Erdogan, he will kick them out. And he was almost about to do it a month ago after the coup d'etat, which he blamed the Americans to be part of. And he wanted to kick them out from Incirlik. And I think Biden was sent mainly in order to calm him down. So definitely Turkey today is being treated very gently by the Americans and the Russians, and now we can even see cooperation between Turkey and the superpowers, while Turkey is waging a war against allegedly the Islamic State and actually against the Kurds, who are fighting the Islamic State.
I don't know if this can get any more complicated. So how does this conflict impact the Middle East and more specifically Israel?
Well, Israel, thank God, is not involved in the chaos in Syria, and it should be like this, as long as Israel's interests are not threatened by any party in Syria yet. However, Israel has to be very careful not to allow, first of all, the Islamic State to arrive to the border with Israel, because this will create a clash, no doubt. And Israel should also keep a very good eye open in order not to allow Hezbollah take over parts of Syria in order to establish another Hezbollah-stan on the ruins of Syria next to the Israeli borders near the Hermon mountain. So this is what Israel should look for, not more than this, because we are too small and too weak in order to re-engineer the Middle East, which superpowers like Russia and the United States fail for years to shape.
Now, we're seeing last week there was some mortar fire, some rounds of rockets that came in from the Syrian border, and Israel's had to respond to this by essentially attacking Assad forces, because Israel continues to blame Damascus for any type of violence or confrontation that takes place on the border, despite where it's coming from. What does Israel need to be doing to maintain safety on this border? Is that the right choice to be making when there's fire coming over the border?
Well, the story is a bit more complicated. It's not only the the Syrian regime, which shoots and sometimes shoots at Israel.
Right.
It's all the parties who are fighting in front of the Golan, here and there.
But Israel chooses to...
Israel always hits the party which hits Israel, regardless of who they are, because Israel actually wants them all. You want to kill each other? Go ahead. Leave us alone. We are not part of the chaos in Syria. We don't want to be part of it. And whoever targets Israel, whether willingly or not willingly, Israel will be there to deter him.
But are these retaliatory strikes in any way dangerous for Israel?
No. Israel has to be viewed as a state which nobody dares to mess with. This is the only peace which Israel can look for in this unfortunate region. There is this region, not a region of hugs and kisses. This is a region of deterrence based on credible threat. And if your threats are not credible, forget it. Your threats should be credible. Everybody has to be afraid of you. This is when you get peace in the Middle East.
Now, this is a slightly different topic, although related. You know, we're seeing a lot of Syrian refugees trying to make their way out of the country, and Israel has been providing medical care for many of these people. But what is Israel's obligation, if at all, to people in need from Syria?
Look, Israel takes care of them when they are wounded and they come to the Israeli border, and it should be like this because Israel cannot sit aside and see how people are dying when they can be treated and saved. This is one thing. The other thing is what to do with millions of Syrians who are fleeing from their country because of the deterioration of the inner situation. In my view, the countries which are participating in the chaos in Syria should take all these refugees. First of all, Turkey, Iran, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates. They should be the first to be forced to take Syrian refugees. Why didn't Iran take Syrian refugees? Why didn't Saudi Arabia take some of them? Why didn't Kuwait? Why didn't all the Emirates? Those who really contributed money, weapons, training to all those who are tearing Syria apart. Why should they go to Europe? What, did Europe take any part in the disintegration of Syria? Why should be the Europeans responsible for what happens in Syria? Why didn't the world, including America, force the Iranians? You want to deal with us? You take 100,000 Syrians. Why? Because you support Assad and you gave him weapons, you gave him money, you gave him ammunition, and you give him political support. You are part of the chaos in Syria. You should take at least 200,000 of Syrian refugees. Why didn't the world say it to Iran? I have absolutely no idea.
Well, thank you so much for coming in, Doctor.
Pleasure.
And hopefully we'll have you back again. The Oscars may still be 6 months away, but you may want to start getting ready because an Israeli student's film has been entered in the Hollywood race. Tel Aviv University graduate Maya Sarfati has won a Top Student Academy Award, and her documentary will now be entered in the Hollywood Oscar race. Sarfati's film was the only one to make the cut in the foreign documentary category, so she's guaranteed a first-place gold medal for her film The Most Beautiful Woman, according to the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. So what is her award-winning movie about? The film tells the incredible true story of a love affair between an SS guard and a young Jewish woman at the Auschwitz concentration camp. SS soldier Franz Wunsch, an Auschwitz guard, falls in love with Helena Citronova, a young Jewish prisoner from Slovakia. On his birthday, Citronova is brought to him to sing birthday songs by his Nazi comrades. After realizing she's to be gassed that day, Wunsch manages to postpone her and her sister's execution. In the early 1970s, Wunsch was arrested and put on trial for being violent to prisoners and working at the Auschwitz gas chambers to insert the lethal gas. Citronova testified as a witness and told how she and Wunsch had a romance that saved the life of her and her sister. After convincing the jury it was all real love, Wunsch was acquitted. The tragic yet uplifting documentary is one of 1,749 films submitted by students around the world. Sarfati is one of 17 students who was nominated for an Oscar, and the Academy Awards are scheduled for Oscar Sunday on February 26, 2017. In times when Judaism faces many challenges, there's one organization that's working hard to successfully engage millions of Jewish people around the world and bring them closer to their Jewish heritage. Joining us in the studio today is Tohel Chairman Rabbi David Stav to talk about some of the burning issues Judaism is facing today. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
So to begin, tell us a little bit about Tohel. What do you do?
Tzahal was established as a rabbinic organization 20 years ago, right after the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, the prime minister. And there was a group of rabbis that asked itself, what could we do in order to bridge a bit of the gaps that existed then and exist today between observant and non-observant people. And one of the challenges was the fact that in Israel there is a religious coercion in which forces all couples to get married in a halachic way. And many of the times, many of the secular people don't like this option and prefer to go to other options. And they feel that actually they are coerced to do things that they don't like them to do that, to be done in this way. And we decided to try to make this ceremony, this ritual, much more friendlier, much more accessible, and to change the approach to the non-observant couples that come to get married. So we started to organize rabbis that volunteered to to perform the weddings, instead of rabbis that used to charge a lot of money, rabbis that usually were not in the same level, they didn't share the same views and the same culture as the secular couples. And so we replaced these rabbis and we sent rabbis that went to the army, went to universities, were Zionist in their view and their vision of life. And all of a sudden, thousands of couples decided that this is the Judaism that they feel that they could be affiliated with, and they want to get married in this way.
Interesting. Now, one of the main topics that you're dealing with as well are prenuptial agreements. Why are you putting so much importance on that issue, specifically when it comes to Judaism?
Recently, we realized that many of the couples prefer not to get married at all because they're afraid not of the Jewish marriage, but about the Jewish process of getting divorced. Because in many occasions, husbands, usually husbands, but not necessarily husbands, in most of the cases it was husbands that used the power and utilized the power that the Jewish halacha gives them and try to demand from the wives financial demands that they were not deserved to get. And they actually postponed the giving the getting the official document that releases the woman to get married to somebody else. So we realized that many of the couples are afraid from going into the process of getting married because they are afraid of the process of getting divorced. And therefore we offer couples every day. There are tens of couples that sign by us their prenuptial agreements that actually arrange the financial agreement between the couples so that if one of the spouses will refuse to give a get, he will have to give so much money that it will not pay for him to do that. And we call it eskem me'ava, an agreement that is done out of love, not out of coercion. We say to the couples, if you love each other, you have to decide not only how to get married, but in case that it will be needed to be separated, that will separate from each other in a proper way, so that nobody will try to raise demands that is not it doesn't deserve to get them.
Interesting. Now, changing topics a little bit, another challenge we're facing is the Jewish status of many Olim Chadashim, new immigrants that are coming to Israel from places like Russia and also from the United States. How are you working to resolve that issue and deal with these people who feel that they're Jewish but are not necessarily able to live Jewish lives here in Israel?
Well, people are not aware of that, especially people that come from the United States or from former Soviet Union, that every immigrant that has arrived to Israel after 1990, he has to prove twice that he's Jewish. He has to prove for the Jewish agency or for the government that he's Jewish for the law of return. But that's relatively easy. It's enough for him to bring a letter from the congregation he belongs to or from the rabbi, whatever rabbi he is related to, that approves that he's Jewish, and this will be enough. But when he will come to get married, this letter will not be enough. He will have to prove again that he is halachically Jewish. In this case, many of the Russian Jews that come and they have no documents that could prove that they are halachically Jewish, and even American Jews that were not affiliated with Orthodox communities.
What are those documents, though? What is proof?
A proof will be an Orthodox document that showed that you got married in an Orthodox wedding. This is almost impossible for Russian Jews to bring because there were no Orthodox marriages, there were no religious marriages at all under the communist regime that took place in Russia in the 20th century. But even in the United States, many of the couples got married civilly or with Reform and conservative rabbis, and this will not be accepted as a proof for them that they're Jewish. And when they want to get married, versus getting the citizenship, that it's enough for them to bring this letter, but when they want to get married, or the kids want to get married, they will have to bring a better proof, and this will not be enough. So we help every year hundreds of American immigrants and thousands of Russian immigrants to prove that they are halachically Jewish. We check through our rabbis that are spread all over the world, and to check after the families to bring evidences that will be accepted by the rabbinic courts in Israel, so that they will be able, as you said in your question, they will be able to live Jewish life and to get married in a Jewish way without any questions and without any problems, and nobody will hesitate to recognize them as Jews anymore.
I guess one of the big questions here is, do you feel like the secular Jewish community is actually interested in becoming more religious?
I would answer this question in a very short way. They want to be more Jewish. They hate coercion. Everything that sounds to them and seems to them to be coercive, they will reject and push away. Everything that sounds to them that we're trying to talk to them in the height of the highs, and that we try to put things into offer, not to coerce, they will accept with two hands. I'll give you one example. We arrange in Zohar every year hundreds of places that invite non-observant people to attend in services for Yom Kippur. Last year we had more than 65,000 people that attended more than 350 places all over the country. And the questions and the requests are, please give us more. So when it comes to Judaism in a way that attracts, in a way that does not coerce, everybody's willing to listen and to hear and to judge for himself what he wants to accept and what he wants to reject. When it comes to coercion, people push away.
But what does it mean to be more Jewish? I mean, how does a secular Jewish person become, closer to the halakha or become more religious, I guess?
No, I don't think that, that's the point. I don't want him to feel that he is in a way, on a process, to become religious. I want him to decide for himself and to choose for himself what does it mean for him to be Jewish. Now, if for someone to be Jewish is to pray in Yom Kippur, it's fine. If for someone is to be Jewish to go to the army, it's also fine. I don't want to judge for him what will be considered as Jewish identity. I want to expose him to Jewish heritage. I want him to know and to let him choose. One of the problems is that most Israelis didn't have the opportunity to be exposed to the Jewish heritage and to decide for themselves what they want to pick up and what they want to push away.
That's true. Well, thank you so much for coming in. This has been very enlightening, and it seems like you're doing some very good work.
Thank you.
All right, guys, a new historical discovery in Israel may provide a glimpse into a special biblical story. Archaeologists have discovered 3,000-year-old artifacts from Kirbet Kayafa, which could be the biblical city of Sha'araim, or Two Gates, that's mentioned in the story of the Battle of David and Goliath. Kirbet Kayafa is just southwest of Jerusalem, and the ancient fortified city was discovered around a decade ago. Yet it wasn't until 2008, the second year of excavations on the site, that archaeologists realized they had come across what was possibly the earliest physical evidence of a Davidic city.
And here in Kirbet Kayafa, from 2007 and onward, for the first time in the archaeology of Israel and in the ancient Near East, we have a fortified city from the time of David. And because it was built and destroyed after 20 or 30 years, everything was frozen. So you really have like a biblical Pompeii. If you want today to know anything about David, you had to look at Kirbet Kayafa. This is the only source that we have about his period.
Kirbet Kayafa dates back to the 11th century BCE, and over the course of 7 years, excavations have revealed a wall city with 2 large and dominant gates, an unusual feature for such a small city. The gates reminded archaeologists of the ancient city of Sharayam, or 2 Gates, home to the famous story of David and the Philistine warrior Goliath. Kirbet Kayafa actually overlooks the Elah Valley, which divided the lands of the Israelites and Philistines, so the town may truly provide a glimpse into the history of David and Goliath.
Archaeology cannot prove or disprove the Bible, but archaeology can prove that what is written in the Bible fit the geographical situation and the anthropology of the period. And the story of David and Goliath and the city are located exactly in the same location, and they're from the same period. So it cannot be a coincidence.
There are some other significant clues at the site that point to the idea that the Israelites had a stronghold in the area. There are no pig bones found among the scores of animal remains in the town, and most notably, there are 2 inscriptions inscribed in Canaanite script on a jar and a pottery fragment in the area, which are believed to be the earliest known examples of Hebrew writing.
Now, if this is really a Davidic period site, and it's on display here in the museum with just the highlight finds, but if you look at the whole site and its history, you see a Judean stronghold on the border of the Philistine, between the Philistines and the Judeans in the Elah Valley from the time period of David. It's incredible historical evidence all coming together at the same time.
The town has been described as a biblical Pompeii, and archaeologists were shocked to discover the ancient ruins lay only 20 centimeters below the surface of the ground. The community is built on hard stone, and carbon dating of charred olive pits excavated from the foundation of the site have helped determine that the city existed between the late 11th century BCE and the early 10th century BCE, the beginning of the Kingdom of Israel. If you're interested in checking out the findings from the historical site and want to travel back in history to the time of Israel's King David, head to the Bible Lands Museum in Jerusalem. The museum will be opening a new exhibition on September 5th called In the Valley of David and Goliath, and it will feature highlights from the dig.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. They say happiness is knowing there's a cake in the oven, so today's word is uga, which means cake in Hebrew. Here in Israel, uga is a part of every major event because whether it's home-baked or store-bought, there's nothing like cake to make you smile. I mean, really, you can't be sad when you're holding a slice of uga. Cake is so beloved here in Israel that there's even a song in Hebrew in its honor. Don't be surprised if Israelis start chanting Efo uga, or where is the cake, on your birthday. We're sure you're just as sweet, but life is too short to say no to uga. After all, you can't buy happiness, but you can buy cake. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Thursday is expected to be sunny with a high of 87 degrees. Friday should be partly cloudy, but the temperature will stay the same. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.79 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to check out our next update at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching, and see you tonight.